Welcome to this unit which looks at substitution. If you remember the linkers video or have come directly from the linkers video, you will already have a rough idea of what substitution is. If you haven't, I'll quickly go over the basics. Briefly speaking, it's where you use a substitutive word in place of another word. This might be done for better style, for example, to stop repeating the same words, or just because you want to vary the vocabulary you're using. Instead of saying the client, the client, the client, the client, you might instead say his, him, party, defendant or claimant, of course, depending on what the context might be. To refresh your memory or to brush up on your skills, please click on the links in the video description below to visit other online resources that talk about substitution. An in-depth analysis of substitution is outside the remit of this unit, but the problems substitution cause most definitely are not. What's the problem? In a nutshell, substitution is misused in legal writing. Why is this a problem? If you misuse substitution or simply get it wrong, you will write a text which is confusing or incomprehensible or communicate a different message to that which you wanted to communicate. When a reader meets incorrect substitution, they stop. They have no other choice. What you've written doesn't make any sense, so the reader has to stop, think about it, and then try to work out what you meant and either get it correct or not. The consequences, I think we can all agree, are all too obvious. Then what's the solution? First, you have to know what the 3 mistakes of substitution are. If you're writing, you can then find them and fix them. If you're reading, you can either contact the author or, in some cases, use the mistake to your advantage. Okay, let's have a look at the 3 main errors. Take a few seconds to have a look at the first example sentence. See if you can spot the issue. Hopefully you've spotted it. I've gone a little synonym crazy to avoid saying the case 3 times. I've said case, suit and litigation. The problem therefore is the use of multiple synonyms. The problem of using multiple synonyms is that you may confuse the reader, especially if they are a layperson not connected to the world of law. To you, the sentence probably made sense, but a layperson may understand case, suit and litigation as referring to different court cases or even issues, and therefore be misled or simply confused. To avoid confusion, we can use the same word, and in this case, we can break down the original sentence into 2 sentences. This gives us the following. Instead of talking about 3 possible different issues, we can now easily follow the progress of one case through various stages. At this point, you might be worried about the rules of style that tells you to avoid repeating words. I want you to always keep the following sentence in mind when writing legal English. This is something I've said before and I will repeat many times over this course. Plain English prefers clarity over elegance. We can sacrifice a small element of style just to make sure the reader is properly informed. Getting back to our sentence, if we feel that there still is an unnecessary overuse of the case, we can try to implement clear substitution. Here we can substitute the second use of the case so that the message is still very clear. This then gives us this. Why only substitute this use of the case? In the second sentence, we have to use the case, as using it here could refer to one of 3 different things which were mentioned in the sentence before: the case, the arguing, or the appeal. In other words, using it here would be ambiguous. This leads us nicely to the next problem that we're going to have a look at. Take a few seconds to read the next example and try to work out what the problem is. I'm sure you've guessed it. Who does he refer to, Ben or Jerry? This use of substitution, which does not clearly refer to what it actually substitutes, is what's called an unclear antecedent. This is caused by lazy writing and not self-editing your work. The result is to leave the reader to guess what the author actually meant. I don't really need to go too deep to explain why that is bad news in a legal context. What's the solution to this? Simple. You need to review your own work to try to spot these errors. They're very difficult to catch when you're writing, and so you only tend to get them when you review your work. You might have to remove the substituted form or redraft the sentence to stop any confusion. It's worth noticing that there is another possible unclear antecedent in the second clause, which is it. This could refer to either the direct object, which is consideration, or the indirect object, which is ice cream. However, the context here is quite clear that it refers to the direct object, consideration. Okay, let's deal with the last issue. Please pause the video and take a minute or two to read the next passage to work out what the problem is. The error in this passage is based on the overuse of what is redundant text. Redundant text, in this case shareholders meeting, should be replaced by redrafting using relevant substituted forms or definitions or a mix of all three. Let's apply all of those solutions to the example text one by one, and please remember to pause the video to take as much time as you want to go through these corrections. Firstly, redrafting. If we remember the units on sentence length and linkers, we can do this. Our redraft is a simple, better sentence structure, and the use of linkers gives us a much better flow to the text. The new second sentence deals with the issues, and to create this sentence, I've introduced the verb table. The new third sentence emphasizes an unusual situation. The new fourth sentence leads to the client's confusion. One point is dealt with in each sentence, which makes it a lot easier to understand. Simple. Okay, let's have a look at using relevant substituted forms. Here, meeting is enough to refer to the shareholders meeting. It substitutes the next use of shareholders meeting. Next, we remove the use of shareholders meeting and change the verb structure to a passive structure which validly focuses on the action. And the final use of shareholders meeting remains unchanged, as using substitution here would weaken the message and be less emphatic. Let's have a look at the final solution, using definitions. By defining shareholders meeting as SM, we can use the defined term instead, and the results can be seen for themselves. It simply presents a lot better. However, don't limit yourself to using just one of these solutions by itself. The best solution may well be a combination of all of the three solutions we've discussed. Okay, let's quickly recap. 1. Use substitution appropriately. 2. Don't use multiple synonyms when doing so may lead to confusion. Remember, legal writing prefers clarity over elegance. 3. Be wary of unclear antecedents. Make sure your use of substitution clearly refers to what's being substituted. 4. If there's redundancy in your writing, redraft, use appropriate substitutive terms, or use definitions, or use a combination of all three. Okay, now we know what the problem is, why it is a problem, and how to fix the problem, we can now test the rule by doing the questions below. However, if you are unsure about any of the points which I've made, please go back and watch the video again. Feel free to pause the video to review all the examples at your own speed. After you do a question below, you can click to see a suggested answer. Just before you get started, please note the following. Please read the question and the hint carefully to make sure you complete the questions properly. Don't just get stuck into the questions, read what you have to do first. In the suggested answer, there may also be further comments to a question, so please read these carefully as well. The suggested answers are just that, suggested. There may be other also correct ways to answer each question. I've tried to put in as many variants as I can, but for obvious reasons I can't write every single correct answer, so as long as your answer follows the main points highlighted in the suggested answer, your answer should be okay. The questions are designed to practice the rule in this unit, so although you can make further corrections to the rest of the text based on the other rules in this course, the answer only concentrates on the rule presented in this unit. And finally, please don't get lost in the legalities of the question text. It's there only to provide material to practice the rule, not to be a law lesson. All that being said, off you go.